Warhammer back with another Mission Impossible episode review. This time I'm doing Season 3, Episode 6, which is called The Cardinal. So Jim gets his instructions from a bookshop of some sort. The mission is to thwart the plan of General Casimir Zepke, who is trying to take absolute power in his country, by replacing the country's spiritual leader, Cardinal Suchek, with a double who will endorse him, and the IMF must also rescue the Cardinal. The team prepares for discussing the layout of the monastery where the Cardinal is being held by Zepke. Some of the interesting gadgets and techniques they'll be using, including an interesting cross for Rollin, more on that later, and some mosquitoes. We cut to Suchek's double, an actor named Anton Nagorsky. He's practicing his mannerisms with Zepke and his second-in-command Major in Felder. Zepke's second-in-command, that is. Nagorsky continues to watch Suchek through a one-way mirror to kind of perfect his impersonation of him. Willie and Barney manage to infiltrate the grounds, and they set up a long tube towards Nagorsky's quarters. And they send the infectious mosquitoes that they have up towards it, causing poor Anton to become feverish. Staying out of sight, they head to a door leading underground and remove its hinges to head down. Meanwhile, Jim taps into the monastery's phone as the general calls a hospital, as he needs Suchek to be healthy enough for when the press arrives in some hours. Cinnamon tells him that there's been an outbreak in the city and no doctors are available. Jim and Cinnamon then drive up to the monastery with a flat tire, asking for help, as a doctor and nurse. Zepke, of course, allows them in, and they are led to Nagorsky's room. Jim says that the Cardinal should be isolated and left alone, but Zepke refuses to leave him and demands that the doctor treat the symptoms so that he can speak to the press, and the doctor's not leaving until he improves. The Cardinal starts to feel a bit better with a cold cloth covering his eyes, but Zepke is surprised to see another Cardinal, Rollin, arrive at the monastery. While Zepke and Felder talk outside the room about how to deal with that, Jim pulls out a tape measure and starts using it around the area of the Cardinal's bed, as well as a temperature control under his pillow. Cardinal Rollin insists on seeing Suchek, or at least hearing from the doctor that he cannot be seen, because of the rumors that he's heard about Zepke not getting along with him. Dr. Jim says that the Cardinal can't be seen except by those who have been inoculated against the plague, which of course Rollin is, so Jim allows it to kind of lift up the Cardinal's spirits. Zepke goes into the Cardinal's room to prepare him, and Jim gives Rollin the measurements that he took from the room. Nagorsky is hesitant to see the Cardinal, but Zepke makes him understand that it must be done in order to avoid suspicion. It takes Major Felder, who is dressed as a nun, a moment to remember that as a sister of the Catholic order, she should kiss the Cardinal's ring, which is kind of a funny moment. Cardinal Rollin becomes suspicious when the Cardinal does not react and behave the way that he should. He tells Zepke that it's obvious what's going on, and Zepke gets Felder to take the Cardinal to the catacombs at gunpoint. Felder and her monk soldiers put Rollin in an airtight sarcophagus with a massive lid. Meanwhile, Willie and Barney get to the inner door of the passage and trigger a rockfall that seals them in, with another deadfall above them. Rollin fortunately has his special cross, which contains a light, some small rollers, and the cross itself is a strong hydraulic jack. Rollin is able to move the lid of the sarcophagus up high enough to be able to see out, and he waits for the monk soldiers to leave as Willie and Barney start to pass out from lack of air. The rollers allow him to shift the lid enough so that he can get out, push in some rods to avert the deadfall, and get Barney and Willie inside. Back upstairs, the heat makes Nagorsky worse, and Jim tells Zepke that he needs some help to get equipment from his car to set up an oxygen tent, so a couple of monks are sent down. This allows Cinnamon some time to remove the heater in the room and adjust under the pillow and adjust the bed. The other three agents come up the stairs, and Barney uses a magnet to open the latch to the hallway. Jim comes back saying he's ready, and Zepke enters a room, allowing Rollin, Willie, and Barney a key few seconds to run into the real Cardinal's room while the monks bring up the equipment. Rollin silently gives Suchek instructions while Barney latches the door shut with the magnet, and he and Willie start working on the wall to Nagorsky's room. Rollin puts on his Suchek masks while the Cardinal blocks a mirror into the room, and the two essentially switch places as Rollin takes his place in front of the mirror, gesturing to the Cardinal to get dressed as Nagorsky is. Barney and Willie remove the grout from the brooks in the wall, and Jim starts up the oxygen tent, which fills with an obscuring mist. Willie gets enough bricks out of the way to reach Nagorski, who they pull into the room. Zepke hears a noise and demands to check on the Cardinal, but Cinnamon stops him and tells him to put out his cigarette first, because of the oxygen, of course. Major Felder tells the General that the press has arrived. The real Cardinal is pushed into the bed, and to buy those precious few seconds the IMF needs, Cinnamon pretends to have trouble with the zipper, as Willie is barely able to get the bricks back in place. The General is told by the Cardinal that he's ready to meet the press. In the Cardinal's small room, a monk comes with food. Fortunately, Barney and Willie are obscured by a folding screen. Rollin removes his mask, and the three get dressed into regular suits as reporters, joining the press throng. Jim and Cinnamon prepare to leave as the other three also leave and go back behind the door to the catacombs and head back outside. Zepke tells Felder to get the press ready and to deal with the problem in the Cardinal's small room. Zepke announces to the press that he has come to an understanding with the Cardinal, who passes Felder on his way downstairs. The Major finds the Cardinal seated and dazed in a chair with tape over his mouth and tries to wake him up to figure out what happened to him. The Cardinal denounces the General as a power-mad murderer to his abject shock and heads towards his waiting car to go to the Capitol to give a proper speech about it. Caught completely flat-footed, the General yells at Nagorski until Major Felder points out where the real Nagorski is, back up on the top floor of the monastery. The IMF's car follows the Cardinal away. Mission frickin' accomplished. Well, if you haven't guessed it by now, this episode gets an unqualified grade of S for superb, just like the heir apparent not too long ago. The episodes have quite a bit in common, more in common than I actually realized before I kind of watched them again for this purpose. I don't think it's a secret just from probably the way I'm talking about how much I absolutely love this episode. This is one that I first saw, I want to say, it's got to be more than 30 years ago. There was a point in the late 1980s where one of the channels where I live was showing reruns of Mission Impossible. And this was one of the episodes that I saw. And I was just gobsmacked, and my jaw was like this the whole episode. And I know that for some of the episodes that I saw from way back at that time, there's a little bit of a nostalgia thing that kicks in. I'm aware of that. That's not the case for this episode. I'll enumerate why this is one of, if not the greatest episode of this show ever. First of all, the music. I pointed out in the Heir Apparent that there's this kind of, there was a special organ music for Barbara Bain when she appears as her character Celine in that one. The music here, there's a bit of kind of somber music that accompanies the real Cardinal whenever we see him. It's a little bit of a subdued version of the MI theme and some other accompanying music. It's wonderful. What else is absolutely great? I would be completely remiss if I didn't start with that entire scene in the catacombs, with Rollin being kind of entombed. At that point, of course, normally, if you were watching this on TV, you would cut to a commercial and be like, oh my God, what the hell is going to happen now? But just his escape with that cross and, the little rollers and everything. And then, with the deadfall, I know it's coming, but I still absolutely adore and enjoy that scene. It's a lot like the puzzle box scene from the Heir Apparent, where, Cinnamon's opening the puzzle box and Rollin is doing his thing. And even if you know it's coming, just visually, it is so perfect, amazing, and stunning. Just an absolute joy to watch. I mentioned with the Heir Apparent, that was absolute master storytelling. This is even better, I think. This is, the story is just so perfect and cogent from end to end. right? It's so simple and so easy to follow what is going on, even for somebody who has never watched the show. I think that if you were to introduce what this show is about to someone who has never seen it or is not familiar with it, this is probably, this and maybe the Heir Apparent, but this probably even more so, would be a better episode to show them as like, hey, this is what this series is all about. Right? It's got it all. It's got the gadgetry. It's got the planning. It's got it's got the the little nuances of doing this and doing that, and just thinking on their feet, which Jim and Cinnamon have to do from time to time. It's all there. Of course, you know what else I'm going to say. The team earns their victory, and you want to talk about power of 5? Hell yeah. This is the best example, I think, ever. There might be the odd one or two that comes close, but this is definitely in the top 5 example of the power of 5 and why, when it is used properly and effectively, it makes a tremendous episode. The final thing I'll mention is the guest stars. Theodore Bikel. He's a very, very prolific actor. You see, he's had an amazing career in all sorts of different genres. As General Zepke, I think he's even better than Charles Aidman in The Heir Apparent. Both of them, not even for a second, not more than maybe 10 seconds at a time, does Zepke take his eye off the ball. Only when it's absolutely necessary and he has to go outside and talk to Jim or whatever. But maybe for a total of 30 seconds is he not right near where his prize is. And, for what the IMF has to do, it's just amazing that they are able to pull it off. I wrote that the way the IMF negotiates around his watchful gaze is first class. And Barbara Babcock as Major Felder is excellent, excellent support. She plays her role perfectly as his second in command. They really, really have to, the IMF has to work for their victory every step of the way. As I mentioned, I looked really, really hard, as I did with the Heir Apparent, for anything that I could qualify, even as just like a minor flaw in the episode. I can't find it. I absolutely can't. I tried. I really, really tried, but there's nothing there. This is a flawless episode in every way that I can imagine. Anyway, enough said about that. Please like this video. Please subscribe to my channel. Please leave your comments. If you disagree and you think that there was something wrong with this episode or you didn't like it, I'd like to hear what you have to say. Even though it is one of my favorites and you're probably not going to convince me otherwise, and I may not be able to convince you. But I would still like to hear what you have to say from fellow fans. Thank you again for watching. I appreciate it, and I'll see you next time.